Hello and welcome to my third tutorial for the dForce magnet. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to grab a handful of fabric and not just one single vertex. I have prepared this little scene. This is a plane that was generated with this primitive menu. The plane is 1 meter by 1 meter and has 100 divisions. When I switch to the wire shaded view, it looks like this. And I have two dForce magnets here at the corners. They are holding the fabric plane in place so it doesn't fall down. And I have a third magnet down here, which is going to pick up this vertex here. For the first 20 frames, it follows the draping of the fabric, and for this I'm using the method I've described in the user guide and in a more detailed manner in the first tutorial. Between frame 20 and frame 60, this magnet picks up the vertex and moves it up here, and the last 30 frames allow the fabric to drape better and settle. I have also a figure which is going to grab this fabric here. Now you can see this doesn't look very convincing because she's holding her hand in the pose you would need for picking up a handful of fabric, but the fabric has only one vertex pulled up. So this looks a bit weird. I want her to grab more of this fabric on this side here. I switch off my figure for now because I don't need it in the animation. And I go back to the first frame and I add some more magnets. Let's switch to a wire view again so I can see the vertices better. And I make sure I have my plane selected. I choose my geometry editor tool, and in the tool settings I switch to the vertex mode, and I pick a vertex more to the left of this magnet here, for example this one, and I load the magnet script with exactly the same settings I used for the first magnet. Accept, and here we are. Now this magnet is new in this scene. It has no keyframes added in the timeline. I want it to move together with the first magnet because she's dragging this piece of fabric all with the same movement. So I select the first magnet, which has all these keyframes in place, and I hit Ctrl C for copy. I select the second magnet and I hit Ctrl V for paste. And you can see that it has added some values here in frame 0. I don't want that, so I set these to 0 and I type the 0 in because Alt and clicking, which resets a slider, would reset it in the entire timeline. It would delete all the animation data. I don't want that, so I type in the 0 manually. And when I check this now, when I scrub the slider here, you can see that it follows in the same manner as the first magnet. Of course, it's not simulated right now, so it doesn't have any effect. I have to run the simulation again to make this vertex attach, and I'll do that in a minute, but before I'm going to add a third magnet, and I select my plane again. Geometry editor tool is still active, vertex mode is still active, and I pick, let's say this one, or higher up, this one. It doesn't have to be in regular spaces. It's probably more natural if you pick irregular spaces and irregular pattern for the vertices. And another magnet, accept, And I still have the data copied in the cache. So I just hit Ctrl V again, set these again to 0. And if I check again, it moves in the same way as the first two magnets. Now, if you want to be very precise, you could check if when the fabric sags, if these magnets are really following the vertex exactly. And no, they aren't, because you can see it's a tiny bit too high up. So if you have a close-up of this draping action, you might need to adjust these magnets to follow the vertex exactly. But in this case, it's not necessary. The difference is tiny, is only minimal, so it's not going to be an issue. But this depends on the geometry. of the clothing. If you have your vertices very far apart, so you have a lot of difference in the draping, you might need to fix that. Okay, so this is going to look all right. Let's check the figure. And I'm going to move this magnet here a bit closer to the others, so the fabric creates a fold and a nicer draping instead of keeping it all straight. And I make these adjustments in the last keyframe, in that frame where it moves into the final pose, before the fabric drapes and settles. Right. Hide the figure again and simulate. And I'm going to pause the recording for the simulation. Right, I'm back, and this is the result. You can see that a bigger portion of the fabric is being pulled up, and it has some irregular draping because I've adjusted these magnets to be at slightly different positions in the last keyframe. And so this looks quite natural. And now I add my figure, and I might just adjust her pose a tiny bit, move that forward. And now for a close-up, I would adjust her finger pose a bit better, but on the whole, this looks much better and much more credible than the first result, where she was just picking up one vertex. As you could see, it wasn't difficult or time-consuming to set up the other magnets. It was just copy and paste, and it worked really well. So all that's needed is a little fine-tuning for her finger pose, and on the whole, this is ready to render. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and thanks for watching.